Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into one of the strangest, most rule-bound worlds in history. Imagine living in a place where every glance, every step, even the way you hold a teacup could decide your reputation. Victorian England wasn't just strict. It was a maze of invisible codes. A society where comfort was sacrificed for appearances, and where even love had to hide behind carefully measured words. Tonight, you'll step inside that world. You won't just hear about it, you'll feel it, layer by layer, rule by rule. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from right now? And what time is it for you? Reading your comments always reminds me how these stories ripple across different nights and mornings around the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe let a fan or a soft hum fill the background, and allow yourself to drift with me into Victorian London. You wake in London, sometime around the 1850s. Your eyelids flutter open to the faintest glow of dying embers in the fireplace. The fire that warmed the room last night has shrunk to a dull orange blush, barely enough to hold the cold at bay. The air is sharp against your skin, cool enough that your breath rises in a pale mist for a moment before vanishing into the gloom. The bed is narrow, its iron frame groaning faintly when you shift your weight. The mattress is stuffed with horsehair, uneven and slightly lumpy, the kind that never lets you forget its presence. Cotton sheets cover it, stiff from washing, carrying the faint smell of lye soap and a trace of dampness from yesterday's drying. Your nightdress is flannel, buttoned snugly at the throat and falling to your ankles, its heavy cloth wrapping you even in sleep. Modesty clings like another blanket, unshaken by the privacy of night. You let your gaze wander slowly around the room. The shapes are blurred by a shadow, but familiar. Against one wall stands a heavy wardrobe, its surface polished to a dull sheen, brass handles darkened by soot. Nearer to you, a porcelain basin rests inside its wooden washstand, the water within cold and still, ready to sting your skin awake. A small dressing table waits nearby, its oval mirror warped slightly, bending the faint light into soft distortions. The air smells of coal, always coal. It drifts through every crack and seam, rising from the chimneys outside to settle like a film over every surface. But mingled with it is something more delicate, the faint citrus edge of bergamot oil, lingering from the bottle on your table. Even perfumes obey rules now. Heavy scents of musk are out of favour, declared vulgar by the Queen herself. Only the clean, sharp fragrances remain acceptable, subtle enough not to scandalise. Outside, London is already awake. You hear it through the glass, the distant clatter of iron-rimmed wheels striking cobblestones, the clip of hooves echoing down narrow streets, the faint bark of a dog somewhere in the fog. A watchman's voice calls the hour, muffled but clear enough to remind you that time itself belongs to ritual. A carriage passes, its lanterns glowing faintly against the grey mist, the sound fading until silence presses against the window once more. You reach for the small brass bell on your bedside table. Its metal is cool to the touch, its surface smooth from years of use. The single chime you give it is soft but bright, a sound meant not to wake the house but to carry down the stairwell to one person in particular. Within moments you hear footsteps, measured and steady, climbing toward your room. The door opens quietly and Anna, your maid, enters. She is already fully dressed despite the hour, her dark woolen skirt brushing the floor, her apron starched, her hair pinned neatly beneath a small cap. She dips into a curtsy, eyes lowered, her voice practiced and calm. "Good morning, miss." "Yeah," she says. Before you can answer, she crosses the floor and pulls at the curtains. They resist her tug. The fabric is thick, heavy, its edges gritty with soot. With a final pull, she parts them and weak daylight seeps into the room. It is not bright. London sun seldom is, but it paints pale streaks across the furniture, picking out the carved edges of the wardrobe and the ripple in the glass basin. The window itself is clouded with condensation, tiny droplets catching the light before sliding downward. The light makes the room no warmer. The cold seeps through the glass, brushes against your cheeks, and creeps into your bones. You shiver, drawing your nightdress closer, though it offers little comfort. In this house, comfort is never the point. Appearances matter more. The fire burned for show last night, not for warmth. The bed is proper, not soft. Even your clothing waiting in the wardrobe will serve fashion first, body second. Anna folds her hands neatly in front of her. "What would you like to wear today, miss?" she asks. Behind her words lies the truth you know well. It is not a question of choice, but of correctness. Each gown signals something different. How formal you are, how restrained, how aware of your place. Too simple, and it suggests neglect. Too ornate, and it risks vanity. The balance must always be exact. You glance toward the wardrobe, though you already feel its weight pressing on you. Today will not belong to you. It will belong to rules. From the moment you rose from this narrow bed, the first thread was drawn tight, and with each layer, each garment, each ritual, each word spoken just so, the day will bind itself more tightly still. The morning has only begun, and already the rules are everywhere. In the way Anna lowers her eyes, in the way you draw your nightdress close, in the way the light itself seems restrained by soot. You inhale again, the coal smoke sharp in your lungs, and know that every breath you take today will be guided by propriety. Anna waits beside the wardrobe, her fingers resting lightly on the carved wood, her eyes lowered in a posture that is neither servile nor equal, just the careful balance expected of a maid. You hear the faint rasp of her breath, steady, patient, waiting for you to rise. When you finally sit up, the floorboard beneath your feet groans softly, a reminder of how long this house has stood, how many mornings like this it has seen. She pulls open the wardrobe doors with a muffled creak, and the smell drifts out at once. Lavender sachets tucked between folded shawls, the slightly sour tang of wool that has been brushed, but never quite loses its scent, the faint dryness of starch. Inside, dresses hang in rigid order, colours muted by London soot no matter how often they are brushed clean. There is no whimsy in their arrangement. Each has its place, its season, its proper occasion. Anna hovers for a moment, her hand gliding over sleeve after sleeve, before settling on a grey day dress with a ribbon of darker trim. "This one, miss," she murmurs, not truly asking. She lays it gently across the back of a chair. The fabric sags under its own weight, the bodice narrow, the skirt wide enough to swallow the chair entirely. Before you can step into it, there are layers. Always layers. Anna kneels to open the small chest at the foot of your bed. From within, she lifts the first garment, a simple white cotton shift. The fabric is plain, a little stiff, the sort that will cling to your skin as the base for everything else. You slip into it as she steadies the cloth, her hands deft, impersonal. Then comes the corset. She brings it forward like a tool of ritual. The whalebone stays stiff, the laces hanging loose at first. She wraps it firmly around your waist, the edges pressing against your ribs even before the laces tighten. You brace your hands on the edge of the washstand as she pulls. The first tug straightens your back. The second compresses your breath. By the third, your ribs ache faintly, your lungs protesting with every shallow inhale. "Is that comfortable, miss?" Anna asks softly, though both of you know comfort is irrelevant. Fashion does not allow for it. You nod anyway, because the answer is always yes. She ties the laces, her fingers quick, and tucks the ends neatly. Historians still argue about these corsets. Some insist they deformed women's bodies, pressing ribs and lungs into unnatural shapes. Others argue the danger was exaggerated, that most were worn looser than the caricatures suggest. But as Anna tugs once more at the ties, you know only the sensation of confinement, of your body no longer belonging to you. Over the shift and corset comes the petticoat, then another still. Each is lifted carefully, slipped over your head or stepped into, the fabric falling in layers that swish and rustle. The weight builds slowly, like snowfall gathering, until your legs are buried beneath it. The sound of fabric brushing fabric fills the room, muffled but insistent. Finally, Anna lowers the crinoline cage around you, its steel hoops clinking softly against one another. It feels strange, like stepping inside a structure more than clothing, as though your body is contained in architecture. The hoops swing slightly when you shift, reminding you that your movements no longer belong fully to you. The grey dress itself comes last, pulled carefully over everything. Anna smooths the bodice down, fastening each small button with patient precision. The sleeves pinch slightly at your shoulders, the neckline pressing modestly against your collar. By the time she finishes, the weight of the clothing clings to you like a burden disguised as elegance. Your hair is next. Anna brings a brush through it, tugging sharply whenever the bristles catch. Stray strands are pulled back, smoothed, forced into obedience. She coils the hair into a tight knot at the nape of your neck, pins digging lightly into your scalp. No flyaway is tolerated. Your reflection in the mirror looks more severe with each pass of her hands, until the softness of sleep is gone, replaced by composure. "Gloves, miss?" she asks finally, offering a pair of pale kid leather. Their surface is cool, powdery, faintly scented with starch. You slide them on, each finger snugly sheathed. It feels strange to hide your hands this way, but propriety demands it. A lady does not expose bare skin in public, not even her fingertips. Gloves mean modesty, gloves mean control. Anna steps back, her eyes flicking over you in one last assessment. She adjusts a fold of the skirt, smooths the line of your sleeve, and folds her hands again. "There," she says. Her voice is soft but final. "You're ready." The words mean more than dressed. They mean armoured, prepared, sealed within the expectation of the day. The corset holds your spine rigid. The skirts force your steps small, the gloves erase the warmth of your own skin. From this moment on, every glance you meet, every movement you make will be judged. Outside, the city grows louder. Carriages rattle past, their wheels splashing through last night's rain. A vendor shouts in the distance, his call muffled by the fog. The faint notes of a church bell drift across the rooftops. All of it reminds you that London is awake, and so must you be. You glance once more at the mirror. The young woman looking back at you is straight-backed, smooth-haired, her waist impossibly narrow. She looks proper, respectable, controlled. She looks like someone ready to navigate the invisible code of her society, but beneath the fabric, beneath the whalebone and steel, you feel your breath caught, your ribs aching faintly, your body encased. Every layer is a reminder that you do not move through this world freely, you move as the rules allow. Breakfast waits downstairs, but reaching it is never as simple as walking into a room. Already you feel the skirts pressing outward, the crinoline swinging slightly as you move. Each step must be measured, cautious, lest you knock against a chair or brush too close to the wall. The staircase itself becomes a trial, your hand gloved and steady on the banister, your eyes lowered just enough to seem modest, your movements rehearsed in silence. The house hums faintly with activity as you descend. From the kitchen below rises the faint clatter of pots, the scent of bacon and kidneys, the sharper edge of coal smoke drifting from the range. Somewhere, the faint swish of a broom marks the passage of another servant already deep in her duties. By the time you reach the dining room, the table is set. Polished silver, porcelain dishes, linen folded precisely. Your father sits at the head, his posture erect, his newspaper raised like a shield. He lowers it only long enough to acknowledge you with a brief nod before returning to the printed columns. Across from him, your mother writes swiftly at her correspondence, the scratch of her pen steady and controlled. Neither is dressed casually. No one in this household would dream of appearing to family in night clothes. Form matters as much within these walls as it does outside them. You take your seat quietly, the chair legs scraping faintly across the floor. A servant steps forward to pour your chocolate into a porcelain cup, the steam rising sweet and dark. A plate is set before you. Eggs, kidneys, thick slices of toast. Breakfast is hearty, substantial. The Victorians believe the morning meal must fortify the body for the hours ahead. You try a bite, but the corset makes eating an act of patience. Each mouthful must be small, your breath carefully timed. A lady never hunches, never gulps, never lets the strain of the garment show. You keep your spine straight, your hand steady, your voice measured when you finally speak. "Good morning," you offer softly. Your father's eyes flick up over the newspaper. "Morning," he replies, the word more courtesy than warmth. In this household, affection is rarely displayed aloud. Your mother sets down her pen for a moment. "Remember," she says, without lifting her eyes from the page, "Mrs. Redgrave's daughter has just become engaged. You must congratulate her when you see her, but do not ask about the wedding. That would be forward." You nod, adding it silently to the growing ledger of rules. It is never enough to know good news. One must know the proper shape of reaction. Congratulate but never pry. Interest can too easily be mistaken for eagerness, and eagerness is vulgar. The room is quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the mantel and the faint rustle of the newspaper as your father turns a page. The silence itself is rule-bound. Conversation at breakfast is polite, reserved, never intimate. A family does not display its affections in front of servants, nor even always among themselves. From the corner of your eye, you notice Anna moving quietly along the wall, adjusting curtains, ensuring everything is in order. Her presence is silent but constant, a reminder that servants see and hear all, and that what is said in this room may travel beyond it. You choose your words carefully, keeping your voice low, your phrases measured. You sip the chocolate slowly, its sweetness coating your tongue. For a moment, warmth spreads through you, a small comfort in a morning bound by propriety. Even this comfort is subject to rule, not too fast, not too greedy, always with composure. Your brother enters late, his boots clicking against the polished floorboards. He bows his head briefly to your parents, slides into his chair, and begins to eat with more ease than you could manage in your gown. Men live by their own set of freedoms, you think. Freedoms you watch but do not touch. His plate fills quickly, and his appetite shows no restraint. No one comments. What is acceptable for him would be a breach for you. Historians still debate whether meals like these reflected prosperity or discipline. Some argue the heavy breakfast showed wealth, proof that a household could afford kidneys and bacon each morning. Others say it was about structure, a ritual of order more than nourishment. Whatever the reason, you feel its weight now in the food on your plate, food you cannot quite finish. not with your ribs bound so tightly. Your mother looks up briefly from her writing. "Do not forget," she says. "Mrs. Harwood is expecting us at 11. Morning calls are an obligation, not an option." The words settle over you as surely as another layer of fabric. You nod again, swallowing the last of your chocolate, careful not to leave a trace at the corner of your mouth. To appear careless even at home would be an invitation to judgment. The meal ends without ceremony. Your father folds his newspaper neatly, your mother gathers her letters. Servants move in silently to clear the dishes, their hands quick, their presence as discreet as shadows. You rise, adjust your gloves, and step back from the table. The day has begun in earnest now. Breakfast is not merely food, it is proof of your family's order, its place in society, its adherence to the code that governs all. You walk from the room with your posture straight, your eyes lowered just enough, the faint weight of the rules pressing against you as firmly as the corset around your ribs. Upstairs, your needlework awaits by the window, the next ritual of the morning, ready to keep your hands from idleness. But that comes soon. For now, the memory of breakfast lingers, the silence, the formality, the rules threaded even through eggs and toast. The drawing room is quiet, lit only by the pale daylight that seeps reluctantly through the long curtains. The air carries the faint smell of beeswax polish and coal dust, an odd combination that clings to the furniture no matter how many times it is scrubbed. You lower yourself into the high-backed chair near the window, the wooden frame hard against your corseted back. On the small table at your side rests a wicker basket filled with embroidery silks, skeins of green, blue, red, all wound tightly, their sheen dulled by handling. A square of linen waits in your lap, the design faintly sketched in pencil, ready to be coaxed into permanence by your needle. You thread the needle slowly, the fine silk slipping between your gloved fingers. Even here, gloves remain. To remove them would feel improper, even if the fabric makes the work clumsier. The needle catches the light as you tilt it, gleaming like a sliver of glass. With the first push into the taut linen, there's a slight resistance followed by the whisper of thread sliding through. The motion repeats, steady, rhythmic, each stitch no larger than a grain of rice. The silence of the room deepens around the sound of the needle. Across from you, your mother sits with her own work. Her embroidery hoop is larger, her stitches precise, her face composed. The faint scrape of her needle through fabric joins yours, a duet of restraint. Neither of you speaks much. Words are permitted, of course, but silence feels safer, like an invisible wall around the room, shielding you both from mistakes. The clock on the mantel ticks on, each second a soft throb in the hush. Now and again a floorboard creaks as a servant passes outside the door. From the street, faint sounds filter in, the clatter of a passing cart, the cry of a vendor calling, "Oranges, fresh oranges," in a rough voice. You glance briefly toward the window, the glass faintly fogged by condensation. Beyond it, the outlines of rooftops blur into the mist. Carriages move like shadows, wheels splashing into puddles left by last night's rain. London continues, but for you, the world is this chair, this fabric, this endless thread. Needlework is more than pastime. It is proof. A proper young lady must never be idle. To sit empty-handed would suggest laziness. Or worse, a restless spirit. So you stitch, not because the linen requires flowers, but because society requires your diligence. Every small blossom you embroider becomes another sign of discipline. Historians note this constant busyness, pointing out that embroidery, piano practice, or watercolours filled hours not for necessity, but to guard against dangerous idleness. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, people like to say. The needle in your hand is less craft than shield. Your mother clears her throat softly, the sound deliberate. "I saw Mrs. Ellsworth yesterday," she says at last. Her voice is even, almost casual, but the name alone makes your pulse quicken. Her son has returned from Cambridge. You lower your gaze to the fabric, carefully drawing the thread through. Has he? Your tone is neutral, practiced, though inside your chest something shifts. She mentioned he asked after you. Your mother's needle continues its work, but you feel her eyes on you, measuring every flicker of expression. You breathe carefully, schooling your features. That was kind of him. The words emerge steady, the safe middle ground between enthusiasm and indifference. A faint smile touches your mother's mouth, and she lowers her eyes again. Nothing more is said, but nothing more needs to be. The conversation has been planted like a seed. Now she will watch how you tend it. Historians still debate how much freedom young women truly had in matters of courtship. Some argue that families orchestrated everything, that affections were secondary to fortune and alliances. Others suggest there was space for choice, but hidden in small gestures. A glance held longer than necessary, a polite question repeated, a smile given only to one person in a crowded room. Whatever the truth, you feel the edges of the game already pressing in, even here in the quiet with needle and thread. The hours stretch. Stitch after stitch builds slowly into a border of leaves and blossoms. Your shoulders ache from holding your posture so straight. Your ribs press against the corset stays, but you do not falter. To sigh or slouch would be unthinkable. Even pain must be carried silently, for endurance itself is another virtue. Your mother eventually sets down her hoop, flexing her fingers. The light has shifted, angled now more sharply through the glass. "It's nearly time," she says, as though announcing the inevitable. You know what she means. Morning calls wait. Rituals more rigid than stitching, where your words and timing will be judged as carefully as your embroidery. Anna appears at the door with quiet efficiency, carrying your bonnet and cloak. She fastens the bonnet beneath your chin, its ribbons snug, its brim limiting your view to a narrow frame. The cloak is wool, heavy but dignified, draped neatly over your shoulders. In the mirror you look composed, your features calm, your hair tight and severe beneath the hat. "Posture, yeah," your mother murmurs, and you straighten at once. Shoulders pulled back, chin lowered slightly. She gives a single nod of approval. The butler waits at the door to open it for you both. When he pulls it wide, cold air rushes in, sharp and damp, carrying the smell of horse dung, wet stone and coal smoke from the street. You step out carefully, skirts rustling, boots clicking against the pavement. The fog clings low, wrapping itself around the outlines of houses, softening them into silhouettes. Beside you, your mother moves with perfect composure. Her steps are small, her eyes modestly lowered. You copy her exactly. Even walking outside is not freedom. It is performance observed by neighbours, by servants, by strangers in passing. The city hums around you, but your role within it is scripted. Every gesture a sign in society's silent play. And so you walk on, the sound of your skirts brushing, your gloves cool against your hands, your breath faintly misting the air. The embroidery is behind you, but its lesson remains. In this world, no moment is without rule. The fog clings to your cloak as you and your mother return from the morning call, the dampness settling like an invisible veil on the wool. The walk itself has been a careful performance. Small steps, eyes lowered, skirts controlled by the deliberate hands. By the time you step back inside the house, your shoulders ache faintly from the constant effort of appearing composed. The drawing room greets you with its familiar stillness. Curtains have been drawn wider, letting in what little daylight presses through the soot-streaked glass. A low fire burns in the grate, its smoke curling faintly before slipping up the chimney. The air smells of ash and polish, beeswax rubbed into every surface until the mahogany gleams even in the weak light. You lower yourself into the same chair you occupied earlier, its carved back pressing against your corset, and smooth the folds of your skirt across your lap. On the small table beside you lies your embroidery. The basket of silks waits, the threads coiled and patient, the sampler half finished. For a moment you hesitate, your hands long to rest, but your mother gestures softly toward it. It reflects well on a household, she says, to see diligence in its daughters. Her tone is gentle, but her meaning is clear. You lift the linen carefully. Letters already march in neat rows across its surface, the alphabet stitched in tiny cross-stitches, each one as rigid and upright as soldiers. Beneath them spreads a spray of half-formed flowers, their petals waiting for colour. You thread the needle, sliding silk through the eye, and begin again. The needle resists the cloth before yielding with a small pop, the thread whispering as it pulls through. Over and over the same sound fills the air, steady, patient, restrained. Your mother's needle joins yours, two rhythms intertwining, filling the silence as surely as conversation might. The mantel clock ticks steadily above the fire, marking each completed stitch. Time passes this way until your fingers ache faintly. You shift, but only slightly. Posture must never falter. The corset presses firmly against your ribs, reminding you that even sitting is not without effort. Yet the work continues, stitch after stitch, as though industriousness itself could hold society together. Historians often remark on the hidden purpose of such tasks. Samplers, embroidery, endless hours of piano practice. These were not only amusements, but proof of diligence, of discipline, of refinement. To visitors, the completed sampler displayed in a frame was not just decoration, but testimony. Here is a young woman trained, obedient, steady. Idleness was dangerous, they believed, a temptation to frivolity or worse. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, the saying went, and you feel the truth of it in the ache of your fingers. The house is quiet yet alive with subtle sounds. Somewhere in the kitchen, the cook moves heavily, the clatter of pans rising through the floor. Upstairs, a servant hums faintly while carrying linens, her tune muffled but steady. A cart rattles past outside, the horse snorting in the cold air. All of London seems to move with its own rhythm, while you remain bound here by thread and cloth. When the mantel clock strikes 4, a servant enters discreetly. "Tea is served," she says, her voice quiet but clear. Almost at once the bell at the front door rings. Your cousin Clara has arrived. She steps into the room with practised grace, curtsying politely to your mother before leaning forward to kiss her gloved hand. Her dress is pale blue, trimmed with white lace at the cuffs, and her bonnet sits at a careful angle that frames her face without appearing vain. She looks like a picture in a fashion plate, though you know her family's means are more modest. The tea service gleams on the low table between you. A porcelain pot painted with faded roses, cups thin enough to feel fragile in the hand, a silver tray bearing slices of sponge cake and small sandwiches with cucumber pressed neatly between bread. Steam curls upward, carrying the fragrance of Darjeeling softened by milk. You pour carefully, steadying the teapot with a gloved hand. The stream of amber liquid fills Clara's cup without spilling, the motion deliberate, rehearsed. She thanks you softly, her voice pitched just above a whisper, Before taking the cup with 2 fingers poised just so, conversation begins lightly. "How mild the weather has turned," Clara says, though the fog presses thick against the window. "Yes," you answer, a relief after last week's chill. No one mentions anything weighty. Instead, words circle around safe subjects. The music performed at church last Sunday, the improvement of the vicar's sermons, a recent article in the newspaper praising a new exhibit at the Royal Academy. You answer politely, your tone measured, never too strong. To express an opinion too boldly would risk impropriety. As the tea flows, Clara leans slightly toward you, her eyes bright with curiosity. "I hear the Ellsworths are to host a musical evening soon," she says in a lower voice. Your pulse stirs, but your expression remains smooth. "So I've heard," you reply softly. Your mother glances at you both, and Clara immediately sits straighter, taking another sip of tea with studied calm. Even gossip must wear the mask of propriety. Historians still debate whether these tea rituals served as cages or connections. Some argue they confined women to trivial chatter, keeping them far from the important affairs of men. Others suggest they created subtle webs of influence, where alliances were formed and reputations shaped over cups of tea. Sitting here, you feel both truths pressing close. The weight of confinement and the flicker of possibility hidden beneath it. The tea is sweet, the sandwich is light, the cake soft with sugar. Yet even in eating, rules bind you. Each bite must be small, each gesture neat. Your gloves resting in your lap while you handle the delicate porcelain. To show hunger, to eat with eagerness would be unladylike. When the cups are empty and the plates cleared, Clara rises. She curtsies again, smiling with her lips but not too much with her eyes, and departs as swiftly as she came. Her visit has lasted less than an hour, yet every moment has been measured, controlled, rehearsed like lines in a play. The house falls quiet once more. The servant clears the tray, her steps muffled against the carpet. Your mother resumes her seat, adjusting her embroidery again. You return to your own chair, smoothing your skirts, your hands folding in your lap. The fire pops softly, the shadows shifting on the wall. Outside, the fog thickens, muffling the city into a grey hush. You hear only the occasional rattle of a carriage or the bark of a distant dog. Inside, time feels suspended, every hour wrapped in ritual. You glance at your gloved hands, their pale leather unmarked, your fingers hidden still. Even here in the intimacy of home, you are never truly unbound. Every detail, every gesture remains part of the silent rules that shape the day. The sampler lies waiting, its unfinished flowers frozen mid-bloom. You pick it up again, setting the needle to cloth. The day presses on, stitch by stitch, rule by rule, as steady and relentless as the tick of the mantel clock. The house is quieter after Clara's departure, but silence never lasts long here. From the hallway comes the faint chime of the clock, then the sound of Anna's careful steps on the stair. She pauses at the drawing-room door, curtsies lightly, and announces in her steady voice, "It is nearly time, miss. Mrs. Redgrave expects you." Your mother folds her embroidery neatly, tucking it into the basket with the same precision she uses for every task. She rises, smoothing her skirts, and glances at you. "Fetch your visiting cards," she reminds. Her words are calm, but they carry weight. Without those little slips of engraved paper, you might as well arrive empty-handed, and arriving empty-handed would be social suicide. You retrieve the small card case from the table in the hall. It is silver, its surface etched with delicate scrollwork, cool against your gloved palm. Inside lie your calling cards, stiff, cream-coloured, each one printed with your name in sharp black letters. They are not yours in spirit, but they announce you to the world more loudly than your own voice could. To enter a house without leaving one would mean you were never there at all. Your cloak is brought forward. Anna drapes it carefully over your shoulders, fastening the clasp beneath your chin. She tucks a fold of fabric into place and steps back to examine her work, nodding slightly before curtsying once more. Your bonnet follows, its brim shading your face so that your eyes cannot be easily read. You glance at yourself in the hall mirror. The figure that looks back is not simply you, it is a creation, restrained, formal, correct. The carriage is not summoned. The Redgraves live only 3 streets away, and to call in person requires a walk, no matter the damp chill that hangs in the air. Outside, the fog curls thickly through the narrow lanes, softening the outlines of the houses. Gas lamps glow faintly in the gloom, each one a hazy halo in the mist. You and your mother step carefully onto the pavement, your skirt swaying with each measured step. Walking itself is a ritual. A Victorian lady never strides, never hurries. Her pace must be calm, deliberate, her eyes lowered, her hands held close. You feel the tug of the crinoline as it brushes against your legs, forcing your steps into smaller arcs. The cloak swings gently behind you, its hem gathering damp from the stones. Men pass now and then, hats raised in silent greeting. You return their acknowledgement with the slightest incline of your head. Nevermore. To look them in the eye would be bold. To speak without introduction would be scandalous. And so the dance continues. Hat tips, nods, lowered gazes, each one a thread in the invisible net of propriety. Your mother leans slightly closer as you walk. Remember, the visit must be precisely 15 minutes. Too short, and you seem careless. Too long, and you seem intrusive. Her voice is quiet but firm, the tone of someone who has rehearsed these instructions countless times. Historians often marvel at this strictness, pointing out that even time itself was bound by etiquette. 15 minutes, never 14, never 16. It was an art of precision, as though society itself were a clock, and every family a cog that must keep perfect rhythm. Some debate whether these rules held genuine power, or whether they were simply an elaborate game. But here in the damp London street, you know they hold power enough to shape every step of your life. Children dart past you, their laughter bright against the fog, their boots splashing in shallow puddles. Their nursemaid scolds them sharply, tugging one back by the hand. You watch them vanish into the mist, and for a moment envy their unrestrained movement. Then you lower your eyes again, resuming the measured pace. By the time you reach the Redgraves' house, the clock in a nearby church tower begins to toll. The sound carries through the fog like a warning bell. You're on time, exactly, perfectly on time. Too early would seem eager. Too late would be disrespectful. Punctuality is another rule in the endless list. A liveried butler answers the door. His eyes flick to the card case in your hand, and you offer 2 cards upon the small silver tray he presents, one for yourself, one for your mother. He disappears with them briefly before returning to usher you inside. The Redgrave drawing room is warm and perfumed faintly with roses. Heavy drapes frame the windows, muffling the street sounds beyond. Mrs. Redgrave rises as you enter, her daughter Margaret at her side. Both curtsy deeply, their movements restrained but graceful. "How kind of you to call," Mrs. Redgrave says. Her voice is smooth, the words formulaic, yet carrying a veneer of warmth. You and your mother return the courtesies, lowering yourselves into polite bows before settling onto the edge of a sofa. You perch there carefully, mindful of the crinoline's wide hoops, your cloak folded neatly beside you. Conversation begins with weather. It always begins with weather. The fog has been relentless, Mrs. Redgrave remarks. Indeed, your mother replies, her voice calm, measured. Though at least the damp has not ruined the winter roses. Margaret smiles faintly, her eyes lowered, her hands folded tightly in her lap. You offer her a polite nod, but nothing more. To show too much interest would be improper. The discussion drifts gently from weather to church sermons, from sermons to a recent concert. Each subject is touched briefly, never explored too deeply. To linger would imply opinion. To express opinion would invite disagreement. And disagreement is vulgar. After a few minutes, Mrs. Redgrave mentions Margaret's engagement. We are most pleased, she says, her eyes shining just enough to seem genuine. You congratulate Margaret softly, choosing your words with care. What a joy, you say, nothing more. To ask about the wedding would be forward. To inquire about her fiancé would be prying. Even joy must be muted, measured, restrained. The mantel clock ticks steadily. 15 minutes. Your mother glances at you and gives the faintest nod. You rise, smoothing your skirts, and curtsy once more. It has been a pleasure, your mother says. The pleasure is ours, Mrs. Redgrave replies. Margaret murmurs her thanks, her eyes never lifting from the floor, and just like that, the visit ends. No embraces, no warmth of touch, only nods, curtsies, measured words. Outside again, the fog swallows you. Your cloak clings damp against your shoulders. Your mother takes a steadying breath and says quietly, That went well. Margaret looked. Well, the highest praise permitted. One word that must carry the weight of all compliments. The walk home is the same measured pace, the same lowered eyes, the same nods to passing gentlemen. Yet inside you something stirs. A flicker of resistance quickly pressed down. For now the rules remain, the city waits. And tomorrow there will be another visit, another 15 minutes, another performance in the endless play of Victorian society. The fog has thinned by the time you return home, though the air remains heavy with the scent of soot and damp wool. A servant helps you remove your cloak and bonnet, hanging them carefully to dry in the hallway. The crinoline sways as you step free of it, and for a moment you feel almost as if you are balancing inside a cage. You smooth the folds of your skirt, adjust your gloves, and follow your mother into the quieter chambers of the house. The afternoon stretches ahead. There is no official appointment until tea, yet even 3 hours are filled with duties. Your mother settles back at her desk to continue her correspondence, pen scratching across crisp paper, her posture as rigid as the lines she writes. You linger near the window once more, your sampler in the hand, but the sight of the outside world distracts you. Across the street, a small group of children chase one another in the road, their shouts carrying faintly through the glass. Their clothes are plain, patched and faded, their boots leaving muddy prints on the stones. A woman, perhaps their mother, perhaps a neighbour, leans from a doorway, ulling in a voice as sharp as the cry of gulls. The children scatter, laughing even as they retreat. For a moment you envy their freedom, to run, to shout, to tumble without thought of posture or propriety. That is a life you know only through the window. Yet you also know society would mark such behaviour as unruly, improper beneath you. The distance between your world and theirs is as thick as the glass itself. Historians often debate whether Victorian rules shielded women or stifled them. Some argue these endless codes offered security, a framework that prevented chaos. Others suggest they were chains designed to restrain not only the body but the mind. Watching the children vanish into the fog, you feel both truths pressing at once. Safety in the structure, suffocation in its weight. A knock at the door draws you back. Anna enters, carrying a folded shawl across her arm. "For your walk, miss," she says softly. "Your mother has decided an hour in the park will be fitting before tea. To be seen strolling, properly attired, is as important as any other ritual. Appearances must be maintained not only indoors, but in the open air. The shawl is warm, heavy wool, patterned with a faint plaid. Anna drapes it carefully across your shoulders before stepping back with her customary curtsy. Your bonnet is replaced, its brim narrowing your view once more, turning the world into a tunnel of propriety. You descend the stairs with deliberate grace, each step echoing faintly in the hall until the butler opens the door. Outside, the air has grown clearer, though the streets remain damp from the morning fog. Your boots click against the stones as you and your mother set out. The park is not far, a modest square of green surrounded by wrought iron railings. Within, gravel paths curve among bare trees, their branches stark against the grey sky. Other figures move along the walkways, ladies in dark cloaks, their skirts brushing the gravel, gentlemen in tall hats, canes tapping lightly at their sides, nursemaids pushing perambulators with infants swaddled in layers of flannel. You fall into the rhythm of it, the endless procession of society on display. Here, even the act of walking is bound by rule. Your mother sets the pace, unhurried, modest, her head inclined in polite acknowledgement to acquaintances who pass. You mirror her steps precisely, each stride small enough that your crinoline does not sway too broadly. A gentleman tips his hat as he approaches. You lower your gaze, responding only with the slightest nod. To look directly into his eyes would be too bold. To ignore him entirely would be rude. The narrow path of propriety lies between. You catch sight of Margaret Redgrave again, walking arm in arm with her mother. Her bonnet tilts forward, hiding most of her face, but you glimpse the faint blush of her cheeks when she notices you. The two of you exchange brief nods, nothing more. Friends, acquaintances, rivals, sometimes the categories blur. The gravel crunches beneath your boots, steady and restrained. Your breath comes shallow, your ribs still bound by the corset's grip. Yet you walk on, posture unyielding, until at last your mother guides you toward a bench beneath a bare tree. She sits carefully, her skirts fanning across the seat, and gestures for you to join her. The bench is cold through the layers of fabric, but you fold your hands neatly in your lap and gaze across the park. The air tastes faintly metallic, the residue of coal smoke lingering even here among the trees. The sky hangs low, colourless, as though it too has been bound by restraint. Your mother speaks softly, her words measured. Society is watching, always watching, even here. Never forget. You nod. The children across the street, the gentlemen with their canes, the ladies in their cloaks, all of them part of the invisible audience. Each glance weighs, each gesture is judged. When the clock in the nearby church tower strikes, your mother rises, signalling the end of the stroll. You follow, your step steady, your head lowered just enough, your thoughts bound as tightly as your body. By the time you return home, the air inside feels warmer though no less rigid. Tea awaits, another ritual, another performance in the long chain of the day. The house seems to hold its breath as the hour for tea arrives. The dining room has been reset, but today the ritual is smaller, more intimate, held in the drawing room where the fire burns brighter. The low table is already laid with porcelain cups and saucers, the teapot warming beneath its knitted cosy, the plate of bread and butter stacked in neat triangles. Steam curls from the spout when the cover is lifted, the fragrance of black tea filling the room like a promise of comfort. Your cousin Clara is gone, but the space feels prepared, as if someone might walk in at any moment. That is the nature of afternoon tea, an occasion both private and public, intimate yet watched. Your mother gestures for you to pour, and you do so carefully, tilting the pot just enough that the stream falls in silence. Not a drop must spill, not a sound betray carelessness. The cups tremble faintly against their saucers as you set them down, though your gloved hands remain steady. You sip slowly, careful of the corset's grip. The heat of the tea warms you, spreading through chest and belly, though even warmth is controlled, measured in restrained sips. Your mother speaks briefly about a recent sermon, noting its length but little else. To speak too critically of a clergyman would be unbecoming, and so her words hover politely on the surface. The fire crackles softly. Shadows flicker on the walls, their shapes distorted by the moving flame. The house has grown quieter, the bustle of servants muffled behind closed doors. Even silence has its etiquette here, a silence filled with restraint rather than ease. Silence has its etiquette here, a silence filled with restraint rather than ease. When the tea is finished and the cups replaced, your mother suggests music. Practice, she says gently, builds refinement. Her voice holds no sharpness, yet you know there is no choice in the matter. You rise, your skirt swaying, and cross to the pianoforte in the corner. The stool is narrow, its wooden seat hard, forcing your posture into rigid lines. You lift the lid, exposing keys dulled by years of touch, their ivory faintly yellowed, their black notes smooth and worn. You place your gloved hands lightly above them, then slip the gloves off just this once, for music requires bare fingers. The first notes are soft, almost hesitant, filling the air with a gentle melody. Your spine remains upright, your elbows tucked close, your expression calm. A Victorian young lady may play with skill, even passion, but she must never let it show on her face. No swaying, no grimacing, no lingering smile, only composure. You play a piece by Mendelssohn, chosen carefully, challenging enough to prove your diligence, but not so flamboyant as to seem proud. The notes ripple like water, even and measured, the sound wrapping the room in a quiet shimmer. Your mother nods faintly in rhythm, her eyes on her needlework again, as though the music is simply another stitch in the fabric of the day. Historians still argue about the purpose of such practice. Some say it was a way to prepare women for the drawing room, to offer accomplishments that might charm a suitor. Others suggest it was training in control discipline expressed through music, ensuring every gesture, every phrase was restrained. As your fingers move across the keys, you feel both truths, the skill and the cage. The hour passes in scales, in arpeggios, in measured passages of song. At times your shoulders ache, your wrists protest, but you continue. To stop too soon would seem careless. To play too long would suggest ambition. Balance, always balance. At last your mother sets down her work. That will do, she says softly. Relief floods you, though you do not let it show. You fold your gloves back onto your hands, close the lid of the pianoforte, and return to your seat. Outside, the fog thickens again, pressing against the window panes, muting the glow of the gas lamps that have begun to flicker to life. The city beyond feels distant, muffled, yet you know it continues to move. Men hurrying home from offices, market women calling the last of their wares, carriages rattling toward evening dinners. Inside, the drawing room grows dim. Candles are brought, their flames quivering as they are lit one by one. The light softens the room, gilding the edges of picture frames, throwing faint halos across the ceiling. The day tilts toward evening, and with it a shift in ritual. Soon you must prepare again. Another gown, another hairstyle, another performance at the dinner table. You sip the last of the cooling tea, the taste bitter at the bottom of the cup, and glance toward your mother. She meets your eyes briefly, her expression unreadable, then lowers them again to her stitching. The silence returns, steady as breath. The candles flicker gently in the sconces, their light soft against the patterned wallpaper. The servant has already drawn the heavy curtains tight, shutting out the lust of the grey daylight and the dim glow of the gas lamps beyond. The house is changing its rhythm, settling into evening. Dinner is not far off. and with it another round of transformation. Anna enters quietly, carrying an armful of fabric. "Evening dress, miss," she murmurs, setting the garments neatly across the bed. The layers are heavier, richer, their colours deeper than what you wore this morning. At dinner, even a family dinner appearance must be recalibrated. Each meal carries its own costume, its own code. You stand while she begins the process once more. First, the removal. She unbuttons your day dress, her fingers quick, sliding the fabric from your shoulders with the precision of someone who has done this 1,000 times. Petticoats are loosened, skirts folded away, the crinoline set aside briefly before being replaced with a wider frame. The corset is laced tighter this time, the whalebone pressing firmly against your ribs, shaping your body into an even narrower line. You take a shallow breath, hold it, then release it carefully as Anna ties the last knot. She lifts the evening gown next, silk the colour of pale rose, trimmed with delicate lace at the cuffs and hem. The fabric sighs as it slides over your head, settling heavily across your shoulders. The bodice clings close, smoothing every line into an elegant silhouette, while the skirt blooms outward, wide enough that you feel yourself once again caged by fabric and steel. Anna adjusts the neckline, a little lower than in the day dress, showing your collarbones a whisper of shoulder. For a young unmarried woman, this is the precise edge of propriety. Just enough skin to signal refinement, never so much as to invite scandal. Your hair is unpinned and brushed out, only to be drawn back up again. Anna coils it into loops at the crown, fastening each with pins that prick faintly against your scalp. She tucks a few silk ribbons among the curls, the colour chosen to echo the dress. In the mirror you see not yourself, but a version sculpted to match the evening hour. Poised, elegant, contained. Gloves complete the ensemble, this pair longer, reaching above your elbows. Anna slides them on carefully, smoothing the kid leather against your skin until each finger is encased. Jewellery is minimal, a thin chain at your neck, a brooch pinned neatly to your bodice. Anything more would be considered ostentatious for an informal family meal. When at last she steps back, you feel the familiar weight of readiness. You are dressed, not for yourself, but for the eyes that will measure you, even if those eyes belong only to your family. The dining room glows with lamplight. The long table gleams beneath its starched cloth, silver, polished to mirror brightness. At the head, your father waits, standing until your mother enters and takes her seat. He then resumes his place, unfolding the newspaper once more before setting it aside with deliberate care. Your brother James arrives moments later, his waistcoat freshly brushed, his boots shined. The family assembles, not with warmth, but with precision. Each movement another step in the choreography of propriety. Dinner begins with soup, clear broth, ladled into shallow bowls. A servant stands ready behind each chair, filling glasses with water, adjusting dishes as they are set down. Conversation is minimal at first, confined to remarks on the meal itself. The broth is light, your father observes. Yes, your mother agrees, most suitable for the season. Nothing further is required. The second course follows, roasted fowl, its skin crisp, served with potatoes and greens. You cut your food into small, neat pieces, never hurrying, never letting the fork clink against the plate. Each bite is modest, each chew discreet. To eat too quickly would seem vulgar. To eat too little would seem disdainful. The balance again is everything. James speaks between mouthfuls, his voice carrying more freely than yours ever could. "I passed the Ellsworths' club today," he says. Their son looked in fine spirits. He mentioned returning from Cambridge with new ideas about business. Your father nods approvingly. A young man with prospects. Old money, steady family. You feel heat rise faintly in your cheeks, though you keep your gaze on your plate. The mention of his name is enough to send your thoughts circling, but you do not allow yourself to smile, or even to frown. Neutrality is safety. Historians note the ritual of Victorian dinners with fascination. Seating was determined by rank, conversation by proximity. The wrong fork could spark quiet ridicule. The wrong comment, social harm. In public dinners, the rules multiplied. The highest-ranking woman sat at the host's right, the highest-ranking man at the hostess's. Families rehearsed this choreography nightly, even in private, so that no error would betray them in society. After the meat comes pudding, dense and sweet, the steam rising faintly as it is spooned onto your plate. You take small bites, the sugar heavy against your tongue, the corset pressing tighter now against your ribs. By the end of the meal, you are not full, but restrained. When the dishes are cleared, your father signals for port and cigars. James follows him to the study, their voices low but growing more animated as the door closes behind them. The smell of tobacco drifts faintly down the hall, rich and sharp. You and your mother return to the drawing room. As custom dictates, ladies do not linger over port. Instead, you resume your needlework. The fire snapping in the grate, the room once more wrapped in quiet. Your mother hums softly as she threads her needle, the tune familiar, almost comforting in its restraint. The evening stretches in this gentle hush. Occasionally your mother remarks on household matters, a servant who needs correcting, a bill that must be settled. You respond when required, but mostly you stitch, filling the silence with small flowers that never wilt. By the time your father and brother return, the clock on the mantel is nearing 10. Your father clears his throat. A steady meal, he says, his voice satisfied. Tomorrow we will dine with the Redgraves. The announcement hangs in the air, a reminder that each day brings new performances. At last, the evening draws to its close. You rise, curtsy slightly, and excuse yourself to Anna's waiting care upstairs. She helps you undress layer by layer, the silk gown folded carefully away, the corset unlaced with a sigh of relief. Your ribs expand, lungs drinking in air more deeply than they have all day. The nightdress replaces all the silk and lace, flannel against your skin once more. As you slip beneath the coarse cotton sheets, you hear the faint noises of the house settling, the servants banking the fire, the clink of dishes being washed, the final steps of the day's ritual falling into silence. The rules have carried you through another evening, binding you from the first course to the last stitch. And tomorrow, they will begin again. The next morning dawns pale and cold, the kind of London day where light never seems to fully arrive. Anna draws back the curtains, and the weak glow that seeps through is hardly more than grey. A fire has been lit in the grate, though it burns low, offering more suggestion of warmth than warmth itself. You rise once more into the ritual. Shift, corset, petticoats, gown, gloves. Each step of dressing is now so familiar, it feels almost automatic. Yet each carries the weight of expectation. Today's hours, however, will not be spent in embroidery or tea alone. This afternoon brings music. Practice demanded by your mother with a firmness that brooks no refusal. After breakfast, a meal heavy with porridge, toast, and the inevitable kidneys, you are directed to the pianoforte. Anna has already polished the instrument's dark wood until it gleams, and the lid is raised to reveal the ivory keys, some yellowed with time, others chipped at the edges from years of use. You sit at the narrow stool, the corset forcing your spine upright. The position is uncomfortable, but comfort is never the point. Your mother settles in her chair nearby, embroidery in her lap, eyes watchful even as her hands stitch. An hour at least, she says softly. Better two. You never know when you will be asked to play. Your fingers touch the keys, cool and smooth beneath your skin. The first sound is tentative, then steadier as scales run upward and downward, the notes blending into a pattern both familiar and endless. The house fills with the music, muffled slightly by the heavy curtains, the vibrations echoing faintly through the floorboards. You move into a sonata, chosen with care, not too passionate, not too bold. The music must demonstrate skill without hinting at ambition. A lady's talent should charm, not astonish. Entertain, not overshadow. Your face remains composed, your eyes focused, your expression serene. Inside, your hands ache with the repetition, but outwardly nothing shows. Historians still debate whether these accomplishments were meant to empower or confine. Some suggest that music, drawing, and language lessons offered women a chance to express themselves, to cultivate genuine skill. Others argue they were traps, designed only to decorate, to impress suitors briefly before being set aside. At the pianoforte, you feel the truth of both. Each note is a chance to speak, and yet every word must be softened, disguised, controlled. An hour passes, then another. Your shoulders burn with the strain of posture. Your fingers stiffen from constant movement, but you continue. When at last your mother nods, signalling that you may stop, you lower the lid with relief. The silence that follows is heavy, almost startling after so much sound. You flex your fingers discreetly, though your mother notices. Grace requires practice, she reminds you. Better to feel pain now than to falter later. You bow your head in acknowledgement, offering no complaint. Complaint is never an option. The afternoon drifts toward evening. Anna brings a tray with tea and thin sandwiches, which you eat with careful bites. Already your thoughts turn toward the dinner ahead. Tonight is not a simple family meal. Tonight, you and your parents will dine at the Redgraves' home. Preparation begins early. The bath is drawn, lukewarm, scented with a few drops of rose oil. The steam clings faintly in the cold room, curling into the air before vanishing. You step in quickly, shivering, the water a shock against your skin. Victorian baths are brief, practical, never indulgent. You wash swiftly before Anna helps you step out, wrapping you in rough towels warmed near the fire. Then the dressing begins again, this time with more ceremony. The corset is laced tighter still, the crinoline wider, the gown heavier. Tonight's dress is pale blue silk, its bodice fitted, its sleeves trimmed with lace, its skirt so wide it brushes the sides of the dressing table as you turn. Anna pins your hair elaborately, weaving small ribbons and tiny artificial flowers among the curls. Powder is dusted lightly over your skin, enough to soften the complexion but never rouge, too suggestive, too bold. When at last she steps back, you hardly recognize yourself. In the mirror stands a figure of elegance, composed, restrained, shimmering faintly in the lamplight. You feel less like a person and more like a portrait carefully arranged for display. The carriage is called. You descend the stairs, cloak draped carefully to protect the gown, gloves smoothed over your hands. Outside, the fog curls around the lamps, their halos hazy in the night air. The horse stamps against the stones, breath steaming. The carriage door opens, and you step inside, your skirts filling the space. The ride through the streets is brief but jostling. Wheels clatter over cobblestones, the lantern swinging, the air damp and smelling of coal. Through the window you glimpse blurred outlines of shop fronts, figures hurrying home, the faint glow of taverns where laughter spills into the street. Yet within the carriage silence reigns. Your mother adjusts her gloves. Your father clears his throat. None of you speaks of hopes or nerves. At last, the carriage slows before the Redgraves townhouse. Lights blaze from every window, spilling gold into the fog. A footman in livery hurries forward, opening the door, offering his hand. You take it carefully, descending with measured grace, cloak drawn close. The butler announces your family in a firm voice. Mr. and Mrs. Harcourt, and Miss Harcourt. The words echo into the glittering drawing room. Faces turn. For an instant you feel the weight of every gaze, every unspoken judgment. And then the evening begins. The Redgraves drawing room glows with lamplight. Gas chandeliers hang overhead, their glass shades glimmering as if each flame were caught in crystal. The air is warm, thick with the scent of beeswax and perfume, faintly edged with the smoke of the fire that crackles in the marble hearth. Women in pale silks and darker satins stand in small groups, their skirts brushing against one another as they curtsy and exchange measured words. Gentlemen in evening coats cluster near the mantel, bowing politely, their voices kept low and smooth. You follow your parents across the room, curtsying to Mrs. Redgrave and her daughter Margaret, who greets you with the faintest blush still lingering from her recent engagement. Compliments are exchanged, always restrained, always careful. Margaret looks well. The flowers in the room are well chosen. The weather has been unusually mild, each statement balanced on the edge of neutrality, polished until nothing sharp remains. Soon the butler announces dinner. The guests form pairs according to rank, each gentleman offering his arm to a lady. You find yourself beside an older man, his expression kind but reserved. Together you follow the procession into the dining room. The room dazzles. A long table stretches beneath glittering chandeliers, its surface gleaming with polished silver and fine china. Each place is laid with a daunting array of utensils, forks and knives for every course, spoons of varying shapes, glasses for wine, water and port. You sit midway down the table, neither near the host nor too far removed. Placement speaks its own silent language, an unspoken measure of importance, though never admitted aloud. The first course arrives, clear soup in delicate porcelain bowls. You lift your spoon carefully, dipping it away from yourself, never toward. A Victorian lady never lets her wrist flick outward, never slurps, never lowers her face too near the bowl. Each action is as studied as a line of embroidery. Conversation begins with the gentleman at your right. His voice is deep, pleasant, speaking of a recent exhibition at the Royal Academy. You nod politely, offering faint remarks. Yes, the landscapes are quite accomplished, the colours so vivid. Not too much enthusiasm lest you seem bold, not too little lest you appear cold. The balance again. Between courses, servants move silently, replacing plates, refilling glasses, removing crumbs with small brushes. Their presence is constant but invisible, part of the ritual itself. You feel the corset pressing more tightly as the meal progresses, each bite smaller than the last. Still, you must not appear to refuse. To push away food would be ungrateful. To eat with appetite would be unfeminine. The second course. Fish, served with sauce that threatens to drip. If handled carelessly, you steady your hand, conscious of every motion. To stain your gown would be more than an accident. It would be a mark against your family, whispered about after the evening ends. The gentleman at your left introduces himself as Mr. Whittaker, a barrister of some repute. He speaks of Parliament, though quickly corrects himself, realising politics is no subject for polite dinner. Instead he shifts to safer ground. The weather, a recent musical performance, the elegance of the evening's arrangements. You respond when addressed, never interrupting, never leading the talk. Historians note the endless codes of dining, the order of courses, the proper way to hold a glass, the correct moment to fold a napkin. Some argue these rules served as a kind of theatre, a demonstration of refinement for those who watched. Others suggest they were traps, waiting for any misstep to reveal a family's weakness. Whatever their origin, you feel their weight now in every motion, every breath. By the time the roast is served, conversation has grown livelier. Laughter rises faintly from the far end of the table, though never too loud. Gentle jokes are permitted, but never anything that risks offence. You smile politely when required, your lips curving without revealing too much of your teeth. Even amusement is controlled. At last, the final course arrives. Pudding, rich and dense, steam rising faintly as it is sliced. The sweetness lingers on your tongue, heavy, cloying beneath the corset's pressure. You place your fork down neatly, fold your napkin once, and rest your hands lightly in your lap. The signal is clear. You have finished gracefully, properly. Then comes the moment every Victorian dinner demands. The hostess glances toward the highest-ranking lady, and together they rise. Chairs scrape softly as all the women stand, curtsying slightly before leaving the men behind. The gentlemen remain for port and cigars. The ladies retreat once more to the drawing room. The separation feels both familiar and strange. You follow your mother and the others into the lamplit room, where fresh coals glow in the grate. The air smells faintly sweeter here, free of cigar smoke. Ladies settle into groups, skirts rustling as they arrange themselves gracefully on sofas and chairs. Conversation resumes at once. Church, charity work, the upcoming season. Margaret Redgrave sits nearby, her hands folded, her cheeks glowing softly. Someone compliments her on her engagement. She blushes, murmurs thanks, then falls silent again. No details, no effusive joy, just enough to acknowledge the news, never enough to seem immodest. You watch quietly, your own hands smoothing the fabric of your skirt. Soon, perhaps, you will be in her place. Perhaps your name will be whispered with a similar blush, but you do not let the thought linger on your face. Composure is everything. The gentlemen rejoin you after half an hour, the faint scent of port and tobacco clinging to their coats. Their laughter softens as they step into the room, adjusting their tones to suit the presence of ladies. Conversation widens, circling through music, travel, books, never politics, never money, never anything that might disturb the balance. A request is made. Would someone play the pianoforte? You lower your eyes modestly, hoping another will rise, but then your mother glances toward you, her expression expectant. The request is clear. You cross the room slowly, skirts swaying, and lower yourself onto the narrow bench. The guests arrange themselves with polite anticipation. You place your hands lightly on the keys, and the music begins once more. The notes fill the room, clear and even, a piece chosen for its grace rather than difficulty. You play steadily, posture perfect, face serene. No emotion must flicker outward, no hint of strain or passion, yet within you feel the music tugging, pulling at some thread of freedom. When the piece ends, polite applause follows. You rise, curtsy slightly, and return to your seat. The evening flows on, conversation resuming as though nothing had shifted. But for you, the echo of the melody lingers. By the time the hour grows late, the guests begin to depart. Cloaks are fetched, carriages announced, farewells exchanged with curtsies and bows. At last, your family's carriage arrives. You step out into the fog once more, the cold air brushing your cheeks, the rules of the evening still heavy on your shoulders. The carriage jolts as it rolls away from the Redgraves townhouse, lanterns swinging faintly inside, casting your parents' faces in alternating light and shadow. Your father sits upright, hands folded across his cane, expression unreadable. Your mother adjusts her gloves, smoothing the leather with deliberate care, as if the evening's success or failure might be pressed into neatness by her touch. You keep your eyes lowered, hands folded in your lap, the pale silk of your gown rustling faintly with every turn of the wheels. No one speaks until the horses settle into a steady rhythm on the damp cobblestones. Then your father clears his throat. "A respectable gathering," he says. The words are few, but the tone is approval. Your mother nods once in agreement. The Redgraves presented themselves well. That is the highest praise you will hear tonight. You lean back, spine stiff against the seat, and watch the mist curl past the window. The glow of gas lamps forms pale circles in the fog, figures moving like shadows beneath their light. Some walk briskly, coats pulled tight against the chill. Others loiter at corners, their laughter carrying faintly. You observe it all through glass, removed, as though London itself is another stage upon which you are not yet allowed to act. At home, the butler opens the door and the warmth of the hallway greets you. Cloaks are removed, gloves set aside, a servant takes your father's cane, another gathers your mother's letters. The house resumes its familiar hush, as though it too is weary from the evening. But the night is not yet over. Even after dinners and calls, there are more rules to follow. Anna waits upstairs, ready to help you undress. The ritual begins again. Gloves peeled away, hairpins drawn one by one until curls tumble heavily down your back. She loosens the laces of your corset, and with each tug you feel your lungs expand, your ribs aching slightly from release. When at last the garment slips free, you breathe deeply for the first time all day. Relief is sharp, almost dizzying. The gown is folded carefully, silk rustling softly as Anna lays it across a chair. Petticoats are lifted, slips removed, until at last the flannel nightdress encloses you once more. Its plain fabric feels almost comforting after so much stiffness. Anna lights a small taper and places it near your bed before curtsying. "Shall I bank the fire, miss?" "Yes," you answer softly. She crouches by the hearth, arranging the coals with practiced hands until they glow dully, enough to smoulder through the night. Then she withdraws quietly, her footsteps fading down the corridor. You lie in bed. The cotton sheets cool against your skin. The house creaks faintly as it settles. Outside, a carriage passes, wheels rattling, horse snorting in the fog. Somewhere far off, a bell tolls the hour. Sleep does not come quickly. Your mind replays the dinner, each phrase, each glance, each curtsy. Did you nod too deeply to Mr. Whittaker? Was your fork held at the correct angle? Were your remarks to Margaret's fiancé appropriately neutral? Every action, every moment is measured after the fact, weighed against the invisible code. Only when you can find no obvious flaw do you allow your body to sink deeper into the mattress. Morning arrives too soon. Anna's knock, the scrape of curtains, the pale light flooding the room. Another day begins. Another performance. Today, however, brings greater anticipation. A formal dinner with the Fairchilds, one of the most respected families in your circle. The hours pass in preparation. You practice music again, your mother insisting that the Fairchilds may request a performance. You sit by the window with your embroidery, though your eyes wander often to the street, where carts rattle by, and children chase one another through puddles. Every stitch you sew feels like part of a costume being prepared, another proof of your readiness. Historians often note how dinners were less about food and more about rank. The seating arrangement, the order of courses, the timing of toasts, all spoke volumes about a family's place in society. To be seated higher was honour, to be seated lower was quiet humiliation. And always people watched, each gesture judged, each misstep remembered. The afternoon wanes. Anna prepares the bath again. The water warmed but not hot, rose oil dripping into the basin. You wash quickly, the cold air sharp on your skin as you step out, towels rough against your arms, the fire barely enough to chase the chill. Then the corset, lace tighter still, ribs compressed until breath comes in short, shallow pulls, the crinoline wider, the gown heavier, tonight pale blue silk with lace trimming, its sheen catching the lamplight. Anna pins your hair into elaborate coils, weaving tiny flowers among the curls, fastening them with pins that prick your scalp. In the mirror, you see a figure, not quite yourself, poised, elegant, almost unreal. The girl who stitched flowers this afternoon has vanished. In her place stands someone sculpted by fabric and steel, ready to be displayed. Your father waits at the bottom of the stairs, his waistcoat impeccable, his watch chain gleaming faintly. He offers his arm to your mother, and together you step into the waiting carriage. The door closes with a heavy thud. The horses stamp and the city begins to move past once more. Gas lamps line the streets, their halos trembling in the mist. Shops are shuttered, their signs swinging faintly in the damp air. Couples hurry along the pavement, cloaks drawn tight, heads bent against the fog. The wheels rattle over uneven stones, jostling you slightly in your seat, but you keep your posture steady. The Fairchild townhouse looms ahead, windows blazing with light, shadows moving behind lace curtains. The carriage pulls to a halt. A footman hurries forward, his livery gleaming, and opens the door with a deep bow. You gather your skirts, place your gloved hand lightly on his arm, and descend. The air is cold, damp, sharp with the smell of horse and smoke, but within moments you step into warmth, into lamplight, into the hum of voices. The butler announces your family loudly, the names echoing against marble walls. Mr. and Mrs. Harcourt and Miss Harcourt. Heads turn, all eyes shift toward you. The evening has begun. The Fairchild's entrance hall is a blaze of light. Marble tiles gleam underfoot, polished to a mirror-like sheen that reflects the swirl of gowns and the gleam of polished boots. Tall mirrors line the walls, throwing back multiple images of guests curtsying and bowing as they remove cloaks and hand them to waiting servants. You catch sight of yourself in one reflection. Hair pinned high, shoulders straight, gown glimmering in pale silk, and the image feels both intimate and strange, as though you are looking at someone fashioned for display, not someone who breathes. Your family is ushered into the drawing room, where the glow of gaslight makes the crystal chandeliers sparkle like cascades of ice. The air is warm, thick with perfume and the faint tang of coal smoke that seeps even into the finest homes. Everywhere conversation hums, polite, subdued, but constant. Ladies incline their heads, their bonnets tilting like flowers swaying in a breeze. Gentlemen bow just so, their voices smooth, practiced. You spot familiar faces. Margaret Redgrave, cheeks pink, her fiancé at her side, Mr. Whittaker, already engaged in earnest talk with another barrister, and then Mr. Edward Fairchild himself. He stands beside his mother, tall, his evening coat cut sharply, his expression polite but softened by a half-smile when he notices you. He bows, not too deeply, not too shallowly, the perfect gesture of respect. "Miss Harcourt," he says, his voice warm but measured. "A pleasure to see you again." You lower your eyes slightly as you curtsy. "Mr. Fairchild, I trust you are well." "I am, thank you," he replies. His gaze lingers a moment longer before he turns politely back to his mother, but the glance has weight. In a world where rules govern every breath, even the briefest flicker of attention feels like thunder. Soon the butler announces that dinner is served. The guests arrange themselves into pairs according to custom, a precise dance of hierarchy. Mr. Fairchild offers his arm to an older lady of obvious importance, while another gentleman approaches to escort you. Together you walk in the procession, the rustle of skirts and the soft thud of polished shoes filling the air. The dining room is dazzling. Candles blaze from tall candelabra down the centre of the long table, their flames mirrored in the shine of crystal and silver. Each place setting bristles with utensils, knives and forks of every size, soup spoons, dessert spoons, glasses for each wine that will appear. It is as much battlefield as feast, where each gesture will be noted, each misstep remembered. You are seated midway down, a position neither humiliating nor exalted, safe, respectable. The napkin is placed across your lap. Soup is served first, clear and steaming, its surface trembling faintly. You lift your spoon carefully, dipping it away from yourself, bringing it to your lips without a sound. The warmth spreads through you, though the corset allows only the smallest of breaths between each swallow. Conversation begins at once with the gentleman on your right. He is a Mr. Denning, a scholar who speaks of the latest discoveries in geology. His words are gentle, meant to inform without lecturing, but even so you choose your responses carefully. "Fascinating," you murmur, when he describes the layers of rock along the southern coast. Not too much interest, lest you seem forward. Not too little, lest you appear dull. The fish course follows, delicate and fragrant with herbs. You choose the correct fork, aware that every eye could judge the error. The gentleman on your left, a Mr. Lockhart, comments on a recent concert. "The violinist was spirited," he says. You nod politely, adding, yet always with restraint, "Quite admirable. Safe words, neither praise nor criticism." Historians still puzzle over the strict etiquette of such meals. Some suggest it was training for control, a way to transform eating, life's most basic act, into ceremony. Others argue it was performance, each guest a player on the stage of society. Whatever its purpose, you feel the pressure in every bite, every glance, every silence. When the roast arrives, the room grows warmer, filled with the scent of gravy and spice. Conversation rises slightly in volume, though never enough to disturb. Your fork hovers just so. Your knife glides without scrape. You listen to the talk around you. One man speaks of Italy, another of church sermons. Never money, never politics. Always safe, always polite. At last, the final course, pudding. Dense and sweet. You take the smallest portion, conscious of the corset's grip. When you set down your fork, folding your napkin, you feel relief, though you let none of it show on your face. Then comes the signal. Mrs. Fairchild glances to the highest-ranking lady, who rises gracefully. All the women stand as one, skirts brushing the floor, chairs scraping softly. You curtsy slightly to your dining companions before following your mother and the others back to the drawing room. The room is warm, sweet with roses. Ladies gather in groups, voices low, their words hovering between gossip and propriety. You settle beside Margaret Redgrave, who looks radiant, though she speaks only in modest phrases when her engagement is mentioned. You smile politely, offering congratulations again, careful never to probe further. The silence between sentences is as important as the words themselves. Half an hour passes before the men return, carrying with them the faint scent of port and tobacco. Their voices are louder, their cheeks flushed, yet as they re-enter, their tones soften, adjusted once more to the presence of ladies. Mr. Fairchild makes his way toward you, pausing first to exchange brief remarks with others, careful not to seem eager. At last he bows slightly. "Miss Harcourt," he says, "might I trouble you for a conversation about music? I believe you are quite accomplished." You lower your eyes modestly. "If you wish, Mr. Fairchild." The two of you speak of Mozart, of Mendelssohn, of a recent performance. The words themselves are impersonal, yet beneath them hums another conversation, silent but powerful. You study his face, the measured warmth of his tone, the way he watches you just a fraction longer than etiquette demands. And you wonder, within this world of endless restraint, could such careful words ever bloom into something more? The drawing room hums with polite conversation, yet every word feels like part of a larger script. Mr. Fairchild lingers near you, never too close, never too long, careful to observe the ritual of circulation. A gentleman must not appear to favour one guest excessively, yet his returns to your side are frequent enough to stir whispers, though whispered behind gloved hands and in glances more than in speech. He compliments your playing from the last musicale. Delicate yet restrained, he says, as though restraint were the highest praise. You reply with a modest nod, careful not to let your eyes brighten too much. In Victorian society, even joy must be tempered. Around you, others perform their own parts. Margaret Redgrave sits stiffly beside her fiancé, both arranged at the precise distance demanded of propriety. They do not touch, do not exchange lingering glances, yet everyone knows their future is sealed. On another sofa, two ladies discuss the weather, their voices light, as though grey skies were as worthy of dissection as politics or art. That too is the point, safety above all else. Historians note that this choreography of conversation served as both shield and prison. By keeping talk bland, disputes were avoided, but passions were stifled as well. Still, beneath the polite words flowed currents of ambition, affection, rivalry. You feel them now, invisible threads pulling at every guest. Mr. Fairchild excuses himself politely, joining another cluster of guests. Your mother moves to sit beside you. "He shows attentiveness," she murmurs, her tone measured, her gaze fixed on the embroidery in her lap. "But do not lean too eagerly into it." You nod, pretending indifference, though your heartbeat quickens. The evening continues with games of whist and more music, each performance carefully chosen. When another young lady plays a Chopin piece with too much flourish, the compliments afterward are polite but edged. Accomplished, one guest murmurs, though perhaps a touch dramatic. The words float like daggers wrapped in silk. You take the lesson to heart. Skill must never overshadow composure. Mr. Fairchild returns near the end of the evening, offering you a glass of punch. He does not linger, just places it carefully at your side, murmuring, "For you, Miss Harcourt." He moves on quickly, but the gesture lingers. In a society where every act is weighed, such a simple kindness carries meaning. By 11, guests begin to leave. The ritual of departure is as precise as that of arrival. Cloaks are fetched, gloves drawn back on, curtsies exchanged. Your family follows the tide, offering thanks to the Fairchilds for their hospitality. Mr. Fairchild bows again as you pass, his eyes catching yours briefly in a glance that feels heavier than words. The carriage ride home is silent, broken only by the clatter of wheels and the snort of the horses. Your mother leans back, her expression thoughtful. At last she says, "A promising evening." Nothing more but enough. At home, Anna helps you undress once again. The gown is folded, the corset unlaced, the air filling your lungs with painful relief. She brushes out your hair, her fingers deft, the comb catching lightly against strands. "Did you enjoy yourself, miss?" she asks, her voice careful but curious. You answer evenly. It was a pleasant evening. Anything more would be too revealing, even to a maid. Yet when she leaves, closing the door softly behind her, you linger by the window. Outside, the fog has thickened once more, gas lamps glowing dimly through the mist. Fairchild is likely returning home as well, perhaps replaying the evening's conversations as carefully as you do now. You lie down, the sheets cool against your skin, your body weary from the weight of fabric, of posture, of silence. The day ends as it began, bound by rules, wrapped in propriety yet threaded with moments, glances, gestures that suggest more. You close your eyes, uncertain whether you are drifting into sleep or simply into another performance waiting with tomorrow's dawn. Morning comes later than you expect. The curtains glow with a tired grey, the kind of London light that never quite decides to arrive. Anna enters at the bell, draws the heavy fabric back, coaxes the fire until it breathes again, and lays out the pieces of the day as if dealing cards. Shift, corset, petticoats, the sober day dress, gloves folded like small folded promises. You rise into it all without comment, breath measured, posture set as the room wakes with you. Outside, a costermonger calls from the street. Inside, the coals answer with a soft crackle. Breakfast repeats its quiet ceremony. The porcelain cup warm between your hands, your father's newspaper propped like a wall, your mother's pen moving through letters that are polite but final. No one speaks of last night, yet the evening hangs in the air like perfume trapped in folds of silk. When your mother reminds you to write a short note of thanks to Mrs. Fairchild, you already know the phrasing. Gratitude must be precise, admiration carefully blunted. Handwriting becomes posture on paper. The hours slide into their appointed grooves. Needlework by the window again. Thread whispering through stiff linen, the sampler's flowers slowly gathering colour. You stitch and think of lamplight and crystal, of the measured weight of Mr. Fairchild's glance. You let the thought drift away before it warms your face. Restraint is the rule you've learned best. Across the room, the antimacassar your mother crocheted months ago sits primly on the back of the chair, those lacy covers people set out to save upholstery from hair oil. Macassar oil stains everything, hence the name, a small fussy guard against evidence of the body, and somehow it feels like the era in miniature. When you lift your eyes, you glimpse Anna passing the door with the ash scuttle, her steps light, her gaze lowered. Her rules run beside yours like a shadowed road. Never be heard on the stairs, never speak unless addressed, never stand still if there is work within reach. Servants follow their own code of invisibility, a choreography that mirrors yours, same precision, different stakes. She will wash with water gone cold, eat when the bell allows, and carry the house's quiet on her back from dawn until the last coal sighs. Letters arrive at midday, a tidy stack on a silver tray. The post in London comes often, sometimes multiple deliveries in a single day, and each tap at the door is a small thud of the city's heartbeat. One envelope bears the Fairchild seal. It is from Mrs. Fairchild. Gracious thanks for your presence. Polite praise for your tasteful conversation. Your mother reads over your shoulder and says only, well, the word means more than it sounds. In the afternoon you walk again, shawl tight, bonnet narrowing your view to a ribbon of pavement and skirts. The park is quieter than yesterday, bare branches lifting like ribs against a flat sky. You pass Margaret Redgrave seated with her mother. Her eyes lift, drop, rise again, each movement careful. You exchange nods, the smallest ripple of acknowledgement. You think of the future arranged for her like place settings. You wonder if she feels safe or caged. Historians still debate whether the Victorian idea of separate spheres, men in public, women in the home, described real life or simply prescribed it. Wives kept books, ran charities, managed staff, sometimes steered fortunes from drawing rooms. Perhaps the walls were thinner than the wallpaper suggests. Perhaps they were not. By late afternoon, the street darkens early. Gas lamps blooming one by one in pale halos. Gaslight is everywhere now. Since the early years of the century, London has lit its streets with it, and by mid-century many houses, the fortunate ones, pipe it into drawing rooms and halls. At dusk the city looks staged, flats painted in soot and yellow, figures sliding through pools of light. You return home with a faint chill in your gloves, breath dimming the glass as the door closes behind you. Tea restores the hands to their ritual. The pot pours without sound. The bread and butter triangles stack like little rooftops. The china thins the heat to something holdable. You drink slowly, thinking of music. Fingers on keys. A phrase held then released like breath. The silence afterward with its unfamiliar depth. You feel a question circling your ribs, but you do not give it language. Language gives shape. Shape invites judgment. Evening arrives with its usual summons to transformation, but tonight your mother stops you at the threshold of the stair. Not a dinner, she says softly. Only us. Relief spreads like warmth from a hidden stove. You loosen the day into a softer bodice, a plainer skirt. The house settles around this lesser staging, with a comfort that always surprises you. You play a little, not for company, but because the notes are a line you can follow when the mind wants to scatter. Mendelssohn again, the melody quiet and exact, a river under unbroken ice. When the servants bring the simple supper, your father speaks of a bank matter in the safest terms, your mother of a parish request for blankets. You offer to mend what's frayed. She nods, pleased, and the nod nudges something small inside your chest that feels like approval finding a perch. The meal ends without speech about feelings. Yet when your father refolds the newspaper and taps its edge into perfect right angles, you catch the distance between all of you and wonder if quiet is always the same as peace. Later you move through the rooms and notice what you always notice only when you are tired. The way the carpet muffles the footfalls of everyone who cannot own a room by sound. The faint line of dust the coal leaves inside the grate. No matter how neatly the maid has raked it, the tiny snag in your glove at the base of your thumb from a piano key you brushed wrong. The sampler's flowers frozen mid-bloom where you put the needle down to answer a very polite knock. These are proof of life-resisting polish. They are your favourite museum. In your room, Anna loosens the day again. Pins fall to the dressing table with the soft tick of hail against a window. The comb draws through your hair with a tug you refuse to flinch at. Laces slacken. Air finds you. You stand still and let your ribs expand as if the room too grows fractionally wider. "Thank you, miss," Anna says when you hand her the folded bodice for pressing, and the gratitude sounds backward and true at once. When she asks if you need anything more, you shake your head. She banks the fire. The last glow paints the iron grate red and then brown and then not at all. In the quiet, you open the drawer where the lavender sachet sleeps beside your visiting cards. Bergamot lingers in the room's corners from mornings past, sharp as a reminder to be clean without courting scandal. You dim the lamp, and in that softer light your reflection loosens. Not the portrait under chandeliers, not the girl at the piano, not the walker whose bonnet edits the world to a ribbon. Just breath warming the darkness a fraction. You think of the rules, the ones that sit on your shoulders like careful hands and the ones you find yourself grateful for, because they tell you what to do when your heart races and you cannot show it. You think of the strange kindness of a world that gives you a small bell to ring when you are alone, and of the sharper kindness that demands you learn how to go without ringing it. You think of Mr. Fairchild's glance as a held note, neither resolved nor lost, and how a life can be measured in unplayed cadences that nevertheless shaped the air. The sheets cool against your skin, the house clicks to its deepest hush. Somewhere beyond, a watchman calls an hour you will not remember. Somewhere closer, a servant draws a bolt softly into place. You let your breath lengthen. You let the day collapse into its neat folds, call, walk, tea, music, dinner, silence, stowed like garments to be put on again tomorrow. For now, the rules loosen just enough for sleep to reach you. The lamps dim in your imagination until they are only warm beads at the edge of sight. And those too go out. The fog outside softens into a pale hush, a curtain pulled kindly across the windows of the mind. You are safe now. The weight of fabric and posture and careful words slides off like a cloak, pulled quietly on the floor where it can cause no trouble. The city's breath thins to a distant murmur, more lullaby than demand. You feel the bed steady beneath you, not asking anything, simply holding. You feel the air gentling around your ribs, the way it always does when the laces are loose, and the last task is finished. You remember the small things that felt like anchors. A cup set carefully onto a saucer, a stitch neatly closed, a nod returned and nothing required. They drift past like slow paper boats, and then they vanish into calm. Let the house grow quiet. Let the coals retire to a soft red. Let the footsteps that measured duty all day turn to softer steps of rest. The rules can wait beyond the door. They know the way to find you in the morning, and they will knock politely when they come. Until then, you owe them nothing. If a thought reaches for you, let it touch and go. If a name rises, let it float. If a face appears in the dim, let it soften and blur and smile and pass. The world that watched you so closely turns its gaze away now, not in judgment, but in mercy. That world fades behind you, one gas lamp at a time, one curtained window at a time, until there is only the soft rhythm of your own breath and the quiet certainty that you are held. You are safe now. The night keeps you. Sleep.